Welcome back to Close Up. You know, for decades now, the issue of equitably funding schools in New Hampshire has been debated. It's been litigated in the courts, and today those discussions continue. A commission to study this issue has just wrapped up its work this month, releasing a comprehensive report to the legislature. Joining us now to talk about the findings of that study are State Senator Jay Kahn. Hello to you.
Good morning, Sean.
Good morning, and Representative David Luno. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Sean.
And Representative, I'll start with you. There is a lot that went into this report. I know you did many hours of work. Can you give us some of the headlines?
Sure. So thanks. We actually started meeting back in January and took it right through the end of November. About 90 meetings, over 200 hours, I think, of work sessions, all public meetings, and basically, what we concluded was that we have a problem in New Hampshire. We have a one-size-fits-all cost model and a funding plan that doesn't take into account the disparities in educational costs based on student and community needs. And we also don't provide districts with or make available resources to the districts that they need to fund their schools adequately. And so in the end, what we came down to is a solution that really has three parts to it. The first part, which calculates the cost for each school district to educate its students to a common outcome, based on actual costs and the disparities in student needs and community characteristics. And we also look to provide each district with access to the financial resources necessary to pay the costs of public education. And also a very important piece is to provide a circuit breaker for property tax relief throughout the state and roll out a really robust property tax relief and deferral program.
And Senator Kahn, I want to continue on this a little bit about why are some of these communities falling behind with the current model that we have?
Right. Well, when David says one size fits all, we've got a model right now that's an input-driven model. It begins with the assumption that average class size is 30 to 1, when in fact there is not a single school in the state that has an average class size of 30 to 1. It is the average in the state is a 12 student to 1 teacher ratio. It also depends on average salaries of third-year teachers, when that is nowhere representative of the average rate of pay. I mean, and the point is that these standardized ratios on which the distribution is developed is done so to keep an average cost down to the lowest possible denominator that doesn't exist in any school in the state. The fact is that in the state, our average spending is $17,000 per student. And in some districts, they may tax themselves heavily and still not be able to spend $17,000 per student. And we know that if a district isn't spending at what it needs to have the same average outcomes in the state, that's putting students at a disadvantage. And in some poorer communities, having to raise that same amount of money is a tax rate that could exceed $20 per $1,000 of assessed valuation, while in other communities that's less than $2 per $1,000 of assessed valuation. So there are issues about student outcomes that are inequitable. And we can find the basis on which that is, and it starts largely with what's the makeup of the students in the school. And if it's you've got more students that are coming from backgrounds of poverty, where students have special language or education needs, the cost of education in that district is going to be greater. And yet, because of the tax base in those communities, they may not be able to raise as much as wealthier communities. And that's what we're trying to balance, is be able to take state resources and direct those to the communities where the need is greater, and the outcomes need to be lifted to achieve those that are common and average across the state.
And we certainly heard themes like this before. Representative Luneau, let me throw this at you. There's a line in this report that stands out saying some experts in school funding have begun to understand in recent years that state school funding systems should not focus on providing the same financial resources to every district, but rather attend to equitable funding and distribution for the statewide benefit of taxpayers and students. Are we kind of going backwards here a little bit in how we would fund this?
No, I think this is a real significant step forward, Sean. First, recognizing, as Senator Cons pointed out, that that depending upon the student body needs and the needs of and the characteristics of the districts, that the cost of an adequate education to receive a comparable statewide outcome varies from district to district, and their access to resources to fund their budgets varies from district to district. So it's really imperative, I think, for the state to be able to use its limited resources to make sure that every district has access to the funds they need to provide an adequate education, and that's really one of the primary causes for the disparity in student outcomes that we see today. You know, it's important that and I think a lot of Granite Staters know that we do have a lot to be proud about when it comes to public education in New Hampshire. You know, on average, we have some of the best student outcomes in the country, but the problem is it's just not everywhere. And sitting here in Hopkinton is one thing. There's a lot of other towns like Hopkinton that have very, very strong student outcomes, but you don't have to go very far away to find cities and towns where that's just not happening, and that's where we need to make sure that those districts are resourced properly in order to provide the equitable access and to an adequate education for their students.
And you used the word adequate there. Adequacy seems to be a word that we use quite a bit in these discussions. Senator, if you could talk a little bit about what is an adequate education, what is adequate funding?
Right. Well, those are two different questions, but the first on an adequate education, I mean, our Constitution is pretty clear. It lays out the goals of education. They're twofold. One is to have a prepared workforce, and the second is a engaged citizenry. And when our education system is not succeeding in every place, then the preparedness of the workforce and the abilities and engagement of the citizenry, they'll vary. And that's really the outcome here that we want to achieve. So that when the court defines what is the opportunity for an adequate education, it is not just what the courses are that students have. It's the kinds of learning resources that the student needs in order to succeed. And those resources, because of differences in household incomes, because of differences in how students learn and what they need to be successful, are going to vary from community to community. And I think what we're proposing in this study, what the study found is if you just do it across the board, we're going to leave students behind. But if we do this in a targeted manner that stresses an allocation that is based upon student needs and community abilities to raise the funds, that the state can structure an allocation and distribution that will meet constitutional definitions of an adequate education and achieve equity both for students and for taxpayers.
And Representative, let me ask you the tough question here, I guess, is you're going to have taxpayers out there worrying, is this going to raise my taxes, whatever gets presented through this?
So that's a great question, Sean, and I think a lot of people who are critical of funding public education properly say, oh, well, we just can't do it. We have to, it needs a new tax. But that's not what the study commission found. The study commission found that we can actually do it with the tax revenues that we have in place today and the revenue sources that are in place today. We're not. The commission's not suggesting that New Hampshire spend more on public education, but just make sure that it uses its resources in a way that makes sure that Manchester has the ability to provide the same adequate education for its students as other cities and towns across the state.
Oh, we got a couple minutes left here. I want some final thoughts on this, if you don't mind, and I'll start with you, State Senator. I guess you did this report. A lot of work went into it. What happens next? What do you hope comes out of this?
Well, we hope that in this next legislative session that the legislature will take this up. We've got a biennial budget coming up, and fiscal 22 is well underway. Towns are developing their budgets. We need to provide some assuredness that there's going to be a continuum of funding in the fiscal 22 budgets from the state to help support the revenues that are town meetings are beginning to consider in the first half of 2021. So not a lot of change in the first year of the biennium, but in the second year, this is where I think the state needs to begin to have the debate. Is there a better distribution model for allocating state funds and getting better outcomes throughout the state? And we can demonstrate a model and bring that forward in the legislature, and the legislature is going to need to consider that.
Sure.
So I think folks will see that the goals of how we measure the New Hampshire advantage isn't just on what we tax, it's also on our outcomes. And we're going to get a much better outcome-based model with something that tries to fund student equity and taxpayer equity in a fairer manner.
And let me give Representative Luhnow the final thought here. We've got about 20 seconds left. Do you think this will prompt some change?
I certainly hope so. I mean, the commission worked really to come down on as a consensus on these recommendations, and we had people from all across the state, different backgrounds, different political viewpoints. I think everybody really understood that we're facing an important problem, and it's not just a problem specific to the communities that are having difficulty funding their schools, but it's a problem for the entire state, and we need to address it.
All right, State Senator Jay Kahn and Representative Jay Luhnow, thank you very much for chatting with us today.